All right, welcome to the Krug Show. A little bit afternoon, 12:15. Hope everybody's having a great Friday. Beautiful day in Northern California. Man, we have got maybe the best weather in the entire country when it gets to the month of May. I mean, I dare anybody to find better weather than what we have right now in Northern California. Beautiful day in Walnut Creek. Beautiful day where Jack is as well. Thanks for joining us on the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show. Brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin, Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue, as I said, in all of Northern California. You have jumped into a simulcast, me and Jack Hammer simulcasting today, talking 49ers. Jack, good to see you, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to see you too, Larry. It's Friday. OTAs are wrapping up week 2, and we got week 3 next week, and then minicamp. It's a great time of the year.
Oh, it really is, and then this is kind of the we got the OTAs, and then kind of the calm before the storm, right? Because then, really, I was talking to some of the coaches yesterday. The coaching life, the NFL's become so big that if you really think about it, you're grinding from training camp through, preseason in August, regular season starts in September. You got all of September, you're grinding, all of October, you're grinding, all of November, all of December. If you're a playoff team, all of January. If you're a Super Bowl team, it doesn't end until the middle of February. And then you think they shut it down? No, they don't shut it down. Then they have review meetings and review the season. Then it's the combine. Then it's the draft prep. Then it's the workouts. Then it's the mini camp, the rookie mini camp. Then it's the OTAs. We're getting then finally at the end of next week when the third round of OTAs comes and goes. These coaches who have been literally grinding will decompress and they will take their summer break between the end of OTAs number 3 and training camp. And that's the family time. That's the time when you maybe go to Hawaii or you take your family on a trip somewhere. Maybe you go to Mexico or wherever. But almost all NFL coaches and their families go on vacation in late May, early June. They got a few weeks off, maybe a month roughly, where they can kind of decompress and be normal people. And then it's back to 100-hour weeks and a grind that I think the average person can't even really fathom. So just talking to the coaches yesterday, it was you could tell that they have had this long run and they're going to get some quality time off and hopefully recharge their batteries before camp. But you say you want to be an NFL coach, you may want to think it over because it's a grind.
Yeah, absolutely. It is nonstop. And it's like you said, it's going to start for them. It starts in late July when they get there for training camp, maybe even a week before that, really, when they're starting to come back to Santa Clara. And then it doesn't end until, like you said, after mini camp. They get about a 40-day break each year. Other than that, it's full go Monday through Sunday. There's no breaks. It's not like a regular job. It's a great gig. If you love football, and you got to really, it's going to test you, because if you really love the sport, then you'll be able to make it. If not, it's going to be really tough. I know you've done it a little bit at the different levels as well. So, and it's a whole different deal than what we look at from the outside in.
Oh, it's a grind, man. It's a grind, and you got to these guys do love what they do. So it's a labor of love, and they get paid handsomely. They get paid well at the NFL level, at least. But man, they're putting in the hours, and the family pays a price. I mean, we'll be honest about it. I don't want to belabor that whole point of it, but it's a reality of NFL football. If you're a pro football coach, even college these days, you are working crazy hours, and I remember talking to an old football coach, and he's like, "Hey, you want to work in football?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I would like to work in football." I said, "What's the key?" He said, "Marry the right woman." He said, "Marry the right woman and make sure that she's on board, because she's going to be doing a lot of work with the kids and a lot of stuff that you're not going to have time for." And that's kind of the reality of NFL life for many coaches. But let's talk about the 49ers, and let's start off on the quarterbacks. Had a chance to talk to Brian Griese yesterday. And it's really an interesting thing. That he'll talk about all the quarterbacks, and I've heard lots of comments from Kyle and Greasy yesterday, and John Lynch at different times about the quarterbacks. It just when it kept when it's time to talk about Trey Lance, they always go to things that aren't complimenting his football. And I always want to hear them compliment his football, or at least describe what they really like about him as a prospect. And they always go back to either his personality or his diligence. But we never really get any compliments on him as a thrower, a processor, a player of the position. And I'm not trying to lead them in any direction. I'm just saying, hey, give me your thoughts. I'm sure he held court with a couple of different groups. I wasn't there when he held it with the big group, so he might have hit on some compliments of Trey. But when I was there and he was asked about Trey, he was like, man, he's really put in the work. He's really a diligent worker, and he's really put in the work. And I think the Niners overall love the makeup of Trey, and they love the work ethic. Now it's just a matter of results on the field. And we're going to find out, what it looks like this summer. And there will be, to me, I think they're in a great spot at that position because they are fortified. And to me, I've seen four guys, if Brock can still throw, we don't know. But I've seen three guys in the other three guys, Allen, Darnold, and Lance, that throw the ball real well and have looked really good in the OTAs based on what I've seen. What have you seen so far from the quarterback play in the OTAs?
My takeaway right now when it comes to the quarterback play is there's been no separation between any of these guys. Lance and Darnold are pretty much at the same level. I would be pressed to say that I've been impressed at all with what either one of them have done. I do think that they're as advertised, right? Sam Darnold, you watch him throw against air, you watch him throw like that. Every ball's right on the money. It's just always on target. You watch Trey Lance throw, we know week one, all those layups were right on the money. And then you watch him play, throwing the ball during the early portion of practice on Wednesday, and the ball's all over the place again. Similar to what we saw last year. He's, missing the ball boys by not even close on some of those throws, skipping the ball at their feet, balls all over the place. And you get into the team drills. We're not really seeing much of anything right now because there's no offensive line. 7-on-7's a little tough to throw the ball against in terms of the linebackers and safeties not having to respect any kind of run fake. But it's just check down city out there. There's been a couple of balls that have been thrown down the field, and Darnold's been the one that's pushed the ball down the field the most out of the two. But right now, I think if you look at Trey Lance, you look at Sam Darnold, and you look at where the situation is just with those two, it's a dead heat in my book.
Yeah, I mean, I had Darnold in this last practice at 10 of 12, 11 of 12. I mean, there might have been a drop in there, but he was pretty much 100%. I had Lance at about 50%. And though it's interesting, if there was one play that you'd say, man, that was the highlight play of the day, it was Lance on a 40-yard pitch and catch with Ayuk down the sideline where, he just dropped it in there perfectly. It was, to me, if you just watch that play, I mean, this is kind of like the issues of watching highlight reels. If you watch a highlight reel shows a capability on a particular play, but it doesn't show consistency. It shows highlights. The Trey Lance highlight to Brandon Ayuk, if you just showed that, you'd say, wow, that was the play of the day. And it absolutely was. But Darnold has been a little bit more consistent with his ball placement in the two OTAs that I saw. I mean, I thought they were kind of real close in the first one. I thought Darnold threw it better earlier in practice. Trey threw it better later in practice. But in this latest edition, Darnold once again threw dime after dime after dime, very accurate. Trey was less accurate. I don't know if it was it wasn't like it was just crazy misses, but it was less accurate than Darnold. And they're side by side. And I'll say this, even Brandon Allen has made some very impressive throws down the field. And I know he's thought of as probably the fourth guy and a guy that doesn't maybe have the biggest arm, but he looks like a better thrower. I mean, I'll say this: he doesn't have a bad arm, that's for sure, and he definitely has some traits that are likable as well. So I'm eager to see what Brandon Allen looks like this summer as well.
Yeah, I think I personally I think the ball that Brandon Allen threw down the left sideline to Daz Newsome, I thought that was the throw of the day. I didn't think the Lance throw
that
was
that was a great ball. That was it Daz Newsome?
Yeah, and that was the one where Newsome didn't really have any separation, but he still took the shot down the sideline and he put that ball right in the bucket on him. The receiver, it was just a really nice. It was well covered, but it was a better ball, and the receiver didn't break stride. The Lance throw, to me, I felt like that ball was a little. I thought it looked to me like Ayuk had to readjust a little bit to get to the ball. It didn't look like he was able to really catch it in stride. He was behind the man, and then he had to kind of readjust his route a little bit and make the catch. It was a nice play. That's the only ball though that we've seen from Trey Lance that's gone down the field through the first 2 days of practice. I think that's the other thing that's a big takeaway here is that he's not pushing the ball down the field very often, and when he has tried to go more than 5 to 10 yards down the field, it's been pretty spotty. In week 1, he had the over route that he threw a wobbler behind the receiver that got broken up, and then at the end of practice on Wednesday, he has the throw to Danny Gray. That skips to him, lands about 2 yards in front of him, and bounces to the receiver. So it's an interesting situation right now when you watch where he is, and then you look at Darnold, and for the most part, most of his stuff has been checkdowns as well. But he did take a deep shot. Last week he took a deep shot on the first play of practice on Wednesday, but it wasn't a good ball. It hung up in the air a little bit, and Gray wasn't able to come down with it. But he comes back a couple plays later and rips an over route to Brandon Ayuk for a gain of about 35 at least. Hit him. It was over 20 yards down the field on that over route. And that was a really good throw. And that's you look at it and the ball's going down the field a little bit more with Darnold. Lance on Wednesday in particular wasn't pushing the ball downfield. He was late on throws. We saw him be late a little bit on throws the first practice in 7-on-7. We saw that again on Wednesday. You look at, he had 3 drops, so that's fine. But then you look at his misses, and like I said, he had that one miss to Danny Gray. He had a ball in the flat to, I think it was Davis Price. I know for sure it was a running back on the flat, and that ball's late. The linebacker's right there. If he catches that ball, he gets lit up. So you start, and then the other one was, I can't remember what the other one was right off the top of my head. But it was just not it wasn't a. Here's the thing with Trey Lance.
The accuracy's been spotty. It's not horrible at all times. It's just hit and miss. It's a little bit of a hit and miss accuracy thing. And I don't even know if it's always tied to mechanics.
Larry, this is who he's been since he showed up in 2021. This isn't what we're seeing right now is the same guy that we saw. What we saw on Wednesday is what we saw in 2021 in training camp, what we saw in 22 in training camp, and what we saw so far. It's been the same guy. There was the first day of practice, so day 2 that we were there were some nice things. At least all of the layup throws were on the money. This last practice, it was just back to what we saw last year in training camp. At least to me, it felt like that.
Yeah, no, I had very similar takeaway. And yet, the other thing, it's like when you're talking to some of the coaches, I just get the feeling that Brian, they don't want to say anything that's not accurate. So they talk a lot about the process and the work ethic, and it does sound like he's really putting in a ton of work on this, which is what I expected, because the people that I talked to who went to Fargo said that this kid loves the process of football, and that he's going to work. What if he has shortcomings? They won't be shortcomings for long, because he's going to put in the work to eradicate his issues and to get beyond it. And The work ethic is clearly there. Now it's just a matter of it needs to translate to the field in on-field production and consistency. And we won't really know anything about that until this summer. To me, the two things that are overwhelming positives with Trey are that he's not throwing with pain as far as the finger. The ball that he's throwing has a little bit better ball. It's a little bit more consistent spiral, though there is some wobble. I'll give even this last practice we saw some wobble, which stands out next to Darnold, right? Because Darnold is throwing just one of the better spirals you're going to see. He throws. He not only can Darnold throw a great ball, he can throw a great ball from a bunch of different releases and a bunch of different angles. And even when you're thinking, oh, he's moving to his left, he's turning his shoulders, he's going to shoot one back, it still comes out like a perfect spiral. He's really, I can see why people are saying he's an impressive thrower of the football. But to me, the things that I like about Trey is I like the fact that he's putting in the work. And I like the fact that he seems to be healthier and going after it. But ultimately, it's going to come right down to consistency. Because I think what we saw, I thought if you want to go on highlights, I think there's always been good highlights of Trey at practice. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of there's also been other plays you're like, what was that? Wow. He just threw that. Think about an NFL practice. You have a quarterback throwing sometimes to a guy, let's say he's running a 12-yard out. And then you have ball boys sometimes like beyond the field, ready to pick up the ball that's errant. He's airmailing the receiver and the ball boy who's behind him, and the guy's running onto another field to bring that ball back. So those things actually happen. So I don't know. We're going to find out what it looks like this summer, but I do get the feeling that Trey is putting in the work. He obviously knows the offense. And it's really just going to come down to, we know that he can do it. It's just a matter of consistency, but consistency is a big part about playing that position.
The consistency is the biggest part of playing that position, to be able to do the same thing over and over again so that your coach knows that you're going to be able to deliver.
Your receivers know where the ball is going to be and that kind of thing.
Yeah, everything. And I agree with you. That is what you're saying in terms of the work ethic with Trey Lance and the person that Trey Lance is. There's nothing to not like about Trey Lance, the person. There's nothing to not like about Trey Lance, the worker. It's clear that he's putting in effort, or at least it looks like he is, to the outside, that he is. And I don't doubt that he is. It's just not translating to results on the field, and being able to consistently, hit a target. And that's, Kyle Shanahan mentioned this, I think it might've been last week during his comments, where, he's talking about the footwork of these quarterbacks, and he's watching their feet, and based on where their feet are, that's where he thinks the ball's going. He doesn't even worry about the throw, because these are NFL quarterbacks and the ball's supposed to get where it's supposed to go. And I think when you watch Trey Lance play, if you're just honest with your assessment of the way that he's performing, you don't know if the ball is going to get where it's supposed to its target. You're not. There's a little bit less confidence in his ball getting to the target than the other two quarterbacks that are in practice, especially right now.
Jeff Darlington, NFL Network, came out with, Trey Lance is getting all the number one reps, and he did get all the number one reps in that first camp. But in this camp, Darnold got all the number one reps, or a lot of the number one reps, from what I could tell. And that's consistent with what Kyle Shanahan said he was going to do, right? Shanahan said he's going to split up the first team reps. I expect that's going to be the case again this summer. What is your takeaway on what we're hearing about Brock Purdy? Because clearly, Jack, Brock Purdy is throwing. He's just not throwing in front of us. He's throwing in front of Lynch. He may not be throwing with a football, but he's not throwing with a full weighted football. But he's also not throwing with a towel anymore. He's throwing with some lighter weight ball in front of 49er player personnel people, or coaches, or both. At some point, somewhere, I would imagine probably out on the field before we're allowed out there, and then they take it inside. What's your What's your assessment? I mean, we're seeing different reports of, Brock's throwing and that John Lynch is very encouraged, but we're not seeing it at all. So it's like, hey, take our word for it. It looks good. What is your assessment of the way they're handling that?
That's typical of what the 49ers do when it comes to players that are injured. They don't put those guys out in front of the media, and if they are out there, we're not allowed to view them in terms of a recording that we do during the open session of practice, that kind of thing. I'm not surprised by Purdy not being out there working on the side field in front of us at this point. Darlington's report yesterday did state that he's throwing a football, that it's not a tennis ball, it's not a racquetball, but a football. And that he threw on Monday. There was no soreness then. He threw again on Wednesday. And so I would expect, based on that time frame, he's probably going to be throwing again today. And this puts him a little bit ahead of schedule, right? The schedule, according to the 49ers, was their next update on him would be 12 weeks post-surgery. And that would have been today. Today is 12 weeks from the time his surgery was completed. So he's not well ahead of schedule, but he's a couple days ahead of schedule. And if he's throwing a football right now, that is far ahead of where most guys are at this point in their recovery. And it all points to him being ready for training camp. The 49ers say that's their hope. Brock Purdy told us last Tuesday that his expectation is that once the mini camp is done in mid-June, during that 40-day break, he's going to be going out to Florida. He's going to be working with his quarterback coaches to get ready, get his throwing motion back, work on all of his mechanics, and make sure that he's all squared away so that he comes back to camp and he's ready to go. I've felt all along that this window in terms of his return was going to likely be ahead of schedule with the 6 months, just based off of the limited amount of data we have on quarterbacks who have undergone these elbow surgeries.
Bobby D439 says, I'll ask the question again. Sorry, Bobby, didn't see it the first time. He says, if they look the same, they being Sam and Trey, if they look the same, shouldn't that be a negative for Trey Lance? He's been in the offense for 2 years. Shouldn't he be ahead of the guy who just got here? Well, that's one way to look at it. I mean, and he probably, Bobby, I would say if you ask Kyle Shanahan, he would probably tell you that Trey is ahead of Sam in several aspects of digesting his offense, I'm sure, because it's a complex offense and there are nuances, and Trey's a bright guy and has been in it for a lot longer. But we're not really seeing offense. What we're seeing are drills, and they're not really running plays per se. You're seeing, against a defense. It's not scheming. They're not scheming to win games here. They're, putting an array of different throws so they can see the quarterbacks and the receivers, build that chemistry. So the one advantage that Darnold has is that Darnold has a lot more reps. Darnold has a lot more experience. Darnold's played a lot more football look at it this way. Brock's played the most football. Darnold's played a lot of football. And Trey's played barely any football. I mean, and that's not subjective. That's very just basic. There it is. He's played 1 full year of football since high school, and he's sat an awful lot. So, who should be ahead of who? Should Darnold be ahead of Lance because he's played a lot more football? I could make that argument, but then I could see the counter argument that would say, no. Lance should be ahead of Darnold because Lance knows the offense better. But then, as I just said, it's not necessarily about scheme at this juncture or deciphering things at the line of scrimmage. It's more about building that rapport with your receivers and shaking off the rust and putting out some field reps for the coaches to analyze. What do you think about this, Jack, as far as Bobby's question here? Should Lance, in your mind, be ahead of Darnold? And is it a negative that they look comparable on the field together, despite Lance's experience in the offense and in the franchise for a much longer period of time?
There's a couple of different ways to look at it. I do think that you're right. I do think that Lance is ahead of Darnold in understanding the offense because he's been around it. So I think he understands the offense better. I think where it's a negative is that the two aren't separated. There's no separation from it, right? And you're right. Lance has a lot less experience than Darnold. I think most people coming into this expected that Darnold was going to look good at this point in the offseason because of his experience. What I'm hoping to see as we get into week 3 and then we get into mini camp, and then when we get to training camp, is I would like to see at some point, I would like to see Trey Lance be able to separate himself from everybody else. And the reason I say that is because we've never seen him do that. In 2021, the reason that Garoppolo won the job is because Lance didn't come in and take it. He didn't separate himself. He didn't show himself to be any really.
He didn't show the consistency that we're talking about.
Right. He didn't show himself to be the better quarterback. And I think that's the biggest thing is I want to see one of these guys start to separate from the other, whether it's Trey Lance from Sam Darnold or Darnold from Lance. I want to see them at some point here start to separate themselves, because right now we haven't seen that yet. Like I said, I think there's some really good things there's some things to like about what Darnold's done. There's some things to like about Trey. I'm not going to point to either one of them. I will not point to either one of them, though, and say this guy right now is clearly better than the other. I think if you're looking at this and you say one is definitely better than the other, you need to check yourself and see if there might be some bias towards one of these guys. Because I think,
yeah, that's a good point.
I haven't seen that yet.
No, to me, they look like comparable quarterbacks on the field. Darnold may have showed a little bit more accuracy. Trey, definitely, I give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because I haven't seen the failure. Where Darnold, we have seen failure and struggles in New York and some struggles in Carolina. Trey, it's about traits and projection, and now it's time. Year 3, year 4, whatever it is, it's time for the traits and the projections and the potential to show itself into consistent play on the football field. When do you think we're going to see Brock Purdy in a game or actually on the field throwing with the team? Will he be throwing in training camp with, Lynch kind of suggested he might be back in camp. Shanahan suggested it. We don't know. It could be the preseason. It could be the regular season. It could be a month into the regular season. All options are on the table. Based on what you're hearing, it sounds like that he's ahead of schedule and they're encouraged by what they see. Do you think we'll see Brock play in preseason games? Do you think he'll be playing against the Raiders when these teams practice together? What's your guess on what Purdy's summer is going to look like?
Yeah, we won't see Purdy throw until he's cleared and he's on the field with the team. And I do think that's, if I had to guess, I've been saying this for a little while now. I think that time frame of August 10th, August 14th, that's, a couple of weeks after camp starts. It still gives you a month before the regular season starts. I think we're going to see him on the field at least by that time, just with the way that this whole thing is progressing. I really think that we're going to see him on the field in training camp. Will they put him on the field in the preseason games? That's a good question. Kyle Shanahan has said that he gets more out of the practices than he does the games when it comes to preseason. So, if they're worried about anything with him, maybe he doesn't play in a preseason game. And so they just, get him going. He also said that they need to see him play before he's going to play in a regular season game. And so that's why the target is training camp. Everything here is trending towards him being ready to go and be able to get a good portion of training camp in.
We've put so much emphasis, not you and I, but I would say Niner content creators, fans, have put so much emphasis in arm strength that we've made it a discussion point this offseason. And yesterday, when I had a chance to be standing right there in front of the Niners quarterback coach, I decided at the very end to ask him what he thought of Brock's arm strength. And is it an issue? Did he view it in any way as an issue? And it was like, what? It was like, what do you mean? He kept saying, hey, there's a reason we drafted this guy. So, I think that's kind of, at the end of the day, the Niners feel really good about the fact that they drafted Brock Purdy, and they probably should. But it was like it had never dawned on him that Brock Purdy had anybody would take any issue with his arm strength in any way, shape, or form. Give me your read on that. I mean, it was like absolutely not. I don't even know where it comes from. He goes, I've never heard that debate. I don't participate in that debate. I don't agree with that. I think there's plenty of arm strength there. And I think, and he basically shot the entire conversation down. We saw Kurt Warner kind of do that as well, pointing to actual playoff film and showing, hey, this is the underneath route. Here's the intermediate route. Here's the deep quadrant option. And here's the guy wide open underneath. But here's Purdy taking a look and throwing it deep. And I think he kind of went through the film and systematically showed you example after example of why Brock Purdy is not your check down artist guy. I mean, it's funny because Alex Smith, I thought one of my biggest frustrations watching Alex Smith was that he was captain check down. And it was almost like he was averse to taking any chances at all it was almost uncomfortable watching the 49ers under Alex Smith towards the end. He was so unwilling to throw it down the field. And maybe that was protection based. Maybe it was arm strength based. Maybe it was lack of downfield rapport with his receivers. But that's what I saw with Alex. It's funny that when I asked Greasy about Purdy's arm strength, he pushed back in a huge way and was like, I have no idea where that's coming from.
Hey, this whole conversation is I think, I don't want to get anybody pissed off at me, but I'll just say this. The people that really, really, really know football aren't saying this. The people that really, really, really know the game aren't questioning Brock Purdy's ability to push the ball down the field. They're not questioning his ability to make the throws. They're not questioning his arm strength. They're not doing any of that stuff. And you've got the quarterback coach saying it. You've got Kurt Warner, who's in the NFL Hall of Fame, for gosh darn it, saying it. And you have another 49er quarterback, Jeff Garcia, saying it as well. And
I didn't see that. You mentioned that Garcia spoke on the radio about Purdy, and of course, people are going to seek out guys like Garcia to give their thoughts and perspective on the Niner quarterback situation. And he's a very cerebral guy. I didn't see what he said. What did he say?
Well, just to kind of like with this point, when it comes to like the arm strength point, this was just part of one of his answers was basically, hey, look, he's a smaller stature guy, but that doesn't matter. He understands the game. He understands the defensive coverages. He understands what's going on offensively and where do they go with the football. And if you just watch this guy play and you're not a fan of another quarterback on this football team, it's clear. I know people get upset with me because they feel like I hate Trey Lance or they feel like I like Jimmy Garoppolo or whatever it is. But just watch the guy play the game. The ball goes where it's supposed to go. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of days about the need for your quarterback to be able to throw the ball downfield to win a Super Bowl. So let's take a look at the guy that just won the most recent Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, right? Cool. Patrick Mahomes in his postseason career has averaged less than 9% of his passes going 20-plus yards down the field. Patrick Mahomes last season in the playoff run that led to the Super Bowl, he threw 7 passes more than 20 yards down the field. 7. In the whole run of the Kansas City Chiefs, completed 3 of them. Brock Purdy, 14. He completed 6 of them. So guess what? Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes completed the same percentage of throws beyond 20 yards in the postseason last year. Okay, Jack, that's not enough. These guys got to air that thing out. They got to go 30-plus yards downfield. Cool. Let's look at those numbers. Last year for Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, according to the charts on Next Gen Stats, he threw the ball twice more than 30 yards down the field in the entire playoffs. Completed 0. Brock Purdy in the playoffs last year, he threw 2 that went over 30 yards. Completed 0. These guys had the exact same completion percentage on throws 20 yards or more down the field. That's Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes. Now, is Brock Purdy Patrick Mahomes? No, I'm not saying that. But the narrative around Brock Purdy is so wrong that people need to actually take a step back and just pay attention to the people who might know more than you, and don't argue with them so much. Ask questions to learn instead of giving your own opinion. I think that's one of the biggest things that that I've taken away, especially with after watching the video from Kurt Warner, where he came out and showed this stuff. And then immediately after, it's like, well, show this game and show this. And it doesn't change anything. I still don't agree with it. What then, if you're not going to agree with it, that's fine. Just keep talking. It's time to ignore you.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some credibility to the, to point. I mean, there's some legitimacy to pointing out that Brock doesn't have the biggest arm.
Absolutely.
I can look at Joe Flacco. I can look at young Terry Bradshaw and see top of the scale arm. But
absolutely,
arm strength is a part of it, but it's not. It's like, it's also about checking boxes. And to me, the word is requisite. Does he have requisite arm strength? Because like Nick Mullins, very similar size player to Brock Purdy, but did not have requisite arm strength. And over time, defenses adjusted, and they stopped defending as much down the field in the deep quadrants of the field. They stopped late in the down worrying about sideline throws and kind of clogged the middle. And then all of a sudden, Nick Mullins is throwing interceptions. And there's guys all over the field, and it seems like the field looks very crowded in the middle of the field. You could kind of make an argument even about Jimmy Garoppolo, who actually had more than requisite arm strength and a really quick release, but he didn't challenge a lot down the field. The Niners under Garoppolo did not have a well-developed outside the numbers passing game, or a they didn't have a real consistent down the field passing game. And so what happened? Late in the down, if Jimmy was late in the down, guys, if you're going to cheat in or cheat out, guess what? The defensive coordinator says, late in the down, guys, cheat in. Cheat in off the hash. He's going to go somewhere inside between the hashes late in the down. And sure enough, the field was clogged and Jimmy starts throwing picks. So I think you have to demonstrate that you can make plays outside the numbers in the NFL. Down the field, to me, is not quite as important as outside the numbers. You have to be able to make the defense defend the length of the field, but the width of the field matters a ton. And can you put the deep out on a line? Does it have enough zip on it to get it out there? That's a big one for sure. But I saw plenty. I mean, Brock Purdy had the best quarterback rating of any quarterback in the NFL outside the numbers. Best. Take your favorite quarterback. They all lined up behind Brock. He had a better quarterback rating than every other quarterback outside the numbers. To me, that shows requisite arm strength. And I've never understood this fascination with putting down and using disparaging terms to describe a quarterback that's, by almost all accounts, one of the great stories of personnel evaluation, to the point where John Schneider from Seattle and Eric DeCosta from Baltimore, without anybody prompting them, both brought up Brock Purdy in their pre-draft discussion, talking about how the 49ers did an incredible job at discovering Brock Purdy and expressing that they would like to find their own version of Brock Purdy. And what does that mean? That means a guy who can really process and has requisite arm strength, and yet is going to be overlooked because of perceived flaws. And they're looking for that player. And that, to me, Brock Purdy's the reason 14 quarterbacks were drafted in this draft, because everybody's looking. In the past, they looked hard for quarterbacks. Now they're looking harder because of Brock Purdy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've heard Jimmy Garoppolo has been the quarterback here, since 2017 all the way through. We heard some of these things throughout that time, was that, just take away the middle of the field, just take away the middle of the field. And teams took away the middle of the field, or they tried to, but the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, he's good enough as a play designer, as a offensive coordinator, to be able to still get his guys into positions to make throws. And even though They were taking things away. This is an offense that continued to work. And I think the difference between Garoppolo and Purdy, one of them is that Garoppolo, his knee injury in 2018 wiped away his ability to move. Because if you remember in 2017, he was able to show some more movement. In 28, after that, it just really wasn't there anymore. And sure, you can do certain things, but Purdy's ability to move around, his athleticism to make plays with his legs, that changes the game because you can try to take away certain areas of the field, but with his ability to move, that allows Shanahan the ability to put him in different spots so that the launch point isn't necessarily from the middle of the field or at the hash. It can be a little bit outside, so he can complete a pass to Juwan Jennings outside the numbers, but he's throwing the ball from outside the hash to begin with, so it's not quite as far of a throw. They're able to work their entire offense with Brock Purdy, and he's giving them plus because of his ability to use his legs. And I think that's the one thing. And I've heard a lot of people, the other thing that people try to use to knock down Brock Purdy is they compare him to Jimmy Garoppolo, or they say, well, we already saw this with Jimmy Garoppolo in 2018, 2017.
I would push back on that and say your scope is way too limited. If everything is about, it's like somebody evaluating a girlfriend and saying, well, my ex-girlfriend. There's more than two women in the world. You know what I mean? It's like, your scope is a little too limited. I think all this fascination with Jimmy was good for 5 games. So the fact that Brock's been good means that, and Jimmy wasn't a franchise quarterback. Well, then Brock's been good for, whatever it is, 7, 8, 9 games. Then by definition, he can't be your franchise quarterback. Different people, different situations, different prospects.
And Garoppolo's numbers came at the end of the season playing against some bad teams and against teams that one of his wins was against the Rams team that was playing their backup. So take whatever. But then you look at what Purdy did, and he not only did he do it in the regular season, the 10 games that he threw passes in, 7 of them were against playoff teams. He did it in the playoffs. He did it against the Seahawks in the playoffs. He did it against Dallas in the playoffs. Jimmy Garoppolo in 2017, it was easy to see some flaws from him. It was easy to see the balls where he's just throwing it up for, you only live once kind of throw, and the guy comes down with it. And we didn't see that from Brock Purdy. Maybe there's a play or two that you could point to over the course of 8 games, that last 8-game stretch where he just kind of throws the ball up for a guy to make a catch. But I don't remember one off the top of my head, whereas I do with Jimmy Garoppolo. I remember watching him do it at Levi Stadium in his first home game. I believe it was against the Tennessee Titans. It just kind of was, threw a ball up in the air, and luckily the guy came back and made a catch. And we saw that kind of stuff a lot. And we didn't see that. There's just so many things that are different between the two. You can point to some stats, you can point to some things like that. But as some guys like to say, if you actually watch the film, this guy played at a very high level, especially as a rookie. I think that's the other part that gets missed, is that this is a guy that was a rookie, stepped onto the field, and moved your offense flawlessly. And I understand he's got a bunch of great athletes around him. You should not get knocked because of your fact that your team had a lot of talent around you. Look at the teams Joe Montana won the Super Bowl with in 88 and 89, just for example. Look at the team that Steve Young won the Super Bowl with in 94, where those teams they were absolutely loaded. 89 through 94, they had the best friggin' wide receiver in the history of the game to throw the ball to. Even in 81 and 84, and those teams, those had really good defenses to help the offense and get the turnovers. That's one of the reasons they were so good in 81, is that you had Ronnie Lott and Eric Wright and Carlton Williamson and Dwight Hicks intercepting the ball all over the place. And so that gave them good, it all works together. So every single thing, when you try to put down Brock Purdy and the performance that he did, you don't even have to go to NFL history to get examples that are like, what are we talking about here? Just look at the 49ers history from 1981 till now. And part of that is, Larry, there's a lot of folks that are talking about it, especially like on Twitter and things like that. They didn't watch the 49ers in 81 through 90, or by the time they started watching the 49ers when they were like 5 and 6, it was 94, right? So the great 49er teams that we they're hearing about it from highlight films or their parents or what have you. And that's not to put them down. It's just like you just haven't seen it, and it's okay. You just haven't seen it. You don't totally understand because you didn't see how loaded those teams were. Joe Montana and those teams at the 49ers and from 81 to 94, those Super Bowl winning teams, just take a minute, look at the defensive stats of those teams. Before those defenses were awesome. The 88 defense, I think, finished the season like 6th overall in points allowed. But if you look at that 1988 season, and instead of just looking at the number, if you know how that season played out, you realize that that team was not good over the first half of the year. If you look at that team from the Washington game when they were 6-5 going into that game. They beat Washington on a Monday night, and they roll the rest of the way through. That defense allowed, I believe it was 13 points a game or some ridiculous number. It was a number that was better than the Chicago Bears 1985 defense. I mean, they were awesome. And that's part of the reason why they won this. They wouldn't have won the Super Bowl. They only scored 20 points in the Super Bowl. They were not good in that Super Bowl in terms of getting the ball into the end zone. They moved the ball up and down the field, but they didn't score touchdowns, right? It was a low scoring 20. That defense kept them in the game. The defense is why a big part of why Joe Montana had the opportunity at the end of the game to drive it down. You talk about like the comebacks and how all this kind of stuff. You don't come from behind to win if you don't have a great defense. And that's part of it too. You have to have a fully, if you want to talk about guys like this, look at Dan Marino. Dan Marino was one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever win the Super Bowl. The reason he never won the Super Bowl, or one of the best quarterbacks to play the game. The reason he never won the Super Bowl is because he didn't have a full team around him. He didn't have a defense that could stop other people. He didn't have a running game that could take the pressure off of him. John Elway, the same thing. And guess what happened? Mike Shanahan went to Denver, got the running game behind him, got a defense that could stop other teams. And guess what happened? He won the friggin' Super Bowl. It's not. Yes, NFL is a quarterback-driven league, but your best quarterbacks don't win the Super Bowl if they don't have other people around them to make plays and pick them up.
Yeah, I mean and also it's funny we put people will say there's an old saying, stats lie and liars use statistics, and it really is true. It's like, well, I'm going to use a statistic that says this. Well, we cherry pick different pieces of information. We put more importance on them than are necessary. I'll give you an example. If I give you who's the biggest quarterback in the NFL, well, what does that mean? You talking about weight? You talking about height? What are we talking about? Who's the biggest quarterback in the NFL? Some people would say it's Josh Allen, right? It's whatever he is, 6'6", whatever. But other people and some scouts I know would say the biggest quarterback in the NFL is Russell Wilson. I'm like, what? Russell Wilson's 5'11". Yeah, but Russell Wilson has 10.25-inch hands. And he has the biggest, that is the largest measured hand of any quarterback currently in the NFL. 10.25 for Russell Wilson. And I've had scouts tell me hand size means more to me than height, because hand size is your ability to control the football. In cold weather, it's hard to control the football. In wet weather, it's really hard to control the football. It's not hard for a guy with 10.25-inch hands. But if you say who's the biggest quarterback in the NFL, nobody's going to say Russell Wilson. Nobody. And yet he's got the biggest hands of any quarterback. I bring this up because people are constantly saying, well, Brock Purdy's small. And, they need to go with somebody, more of a pocket passer. That's the thing about Lance and Darnold. They're big. Okay. Lance is 6'3" and 7/8. Brock Purdy's 6'1". Lance is 228 pounds or 232 pounds. Brock Purdy's like 224. I mean, we're really talking about very similar sized guys. Lance's hands are 9 1/8 inch. Purdy's hands are 9 1/4 inch. So, I mean, technically Purdy has bigger hands than Lance. And what are we talking about? We're talking about a couple inches of height. I mean, it's not like one guy's 6'6" and the other guy's 5'8". We're talking about 6'3" and 7/8 against 6'1" and change. and Purdy's actually got the bigger hand. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I just feel like, to me, what was exciting about Brock Purdy was seeing his ability to process combined with the escapability.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think he had the arm that he had. When I saw his college film, and anybody like Lance Zierlein, NFL.com, wrote a scouting report. It's all based on his Iowa State film. His Iowa State film, I would have said the exact same thing that Zierlein said. It's like, you know what? I don't know if he's got arm strength. I literally was swearing when I saw that they drafted him, because I'm like, why are they drafting this college quarterback who's nothing more than a backup? And because I just didn't think he had requisite arm strength. But then he discovered more arm strength when he went to Arizona, and he showed up in minicamp, and it looked plenty strong to me. And I'm like, well, looks pretty strong. And then in training camp, I'm like, well, this guy looks pretty strong. I mean, he doesn't have the same stature as Lance physically standing next to him, but you know what? The ball is coming out pretty good. And, I mean, it's just, they looked very comparable as throwers. So anyway, I just think that it's interesting that we put tons of credence in height, and, Draymond Green's 6'8", and there's other guys who are 6'8", but Draymond Green plays like he's 7 feet because he's got a 7'2" wingspan. So in that case, arm length changes. Really, is Draymond Green 6'7"? Well, not really. He's more like a 6'10" guy. And is Russell Wilson 5'10" and change, or 5'11"? Yeah, technically, but he's got 10 1/4 inch hands. And Purdy, does he have the strongest arm? I don't know, but he looks like he controls the football pretty well. Sure enough, he's got bigger hands than Lance. So, I mean, it's just, but nobody's walking around talking about bigger hands than Lance. Oh, hold on a second. My camera. Got to switch my camera here. I've been going too long. Let me hit my my Logitech. Time for the Logitech camera.
Larry's cakes are too hot. It shut off the camera.
Exactly. We fold it back. I've got 3 cameras, so now I'm going to the Logitech. But so what I'm saying, it's like we go with a certain measurement or a certain stat, or if you want to use stats, you can always find one that tells your story, instead of just talking to the players, talking to the coaches. I talked to Brandon Ayuk late in the year, and I'm asking him about Brock Purdy, and I could just tell he thought really highly of it. It's all there on YouTube. You can watch the interview yourself. Did an interview late in the year with Willie Snead. He compared Brock Purdy to his former teammate Drew Brees. So I'm just saying, it's like these guys play, and if I'm a receiver, do I want the world to think that a quarterback's great if he's not? No, because if he's not good, guess what? If I'm telling everybody he's great and we're not getting any production, guess who they're blaming? Me. So the receivers don't have a vested interest in telling you the quarterback's great if the quarterback's not great. And yet several of them spoke so highly of Purdy. And I asked Willie Snead late in the year, I'm like, are you shocked by this? And he's like, it is pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing watching a guy who, played this summer and then sat for 3 months and then comes off the bench in December and doesn't lose, and they run the table and go to the playoffs and then wins 2 playoff games and had maybe his best game in the first game of the playoffs against Seattle, a team that he was beating for the second time. So, and there's a lot of people saying, well, when teams get a better look at him and they make adjustments, he beat Seattle that second time, looked pretty good doing it too. So I don't know. It's just, the off season's long. And I think everybody who does this knows that, if you're really going to get traction, it can't be a stream devoted to the offensive line. It just can't be. People care about the quarterback. The quarterback is the head of the team. And there's always going to be an over-analysis of it. But it's one thing to say, you know what, I'm a little skeptical about Brock and I got to see more of it. But it's another thing to be like, he can't do it. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
He can't do it. He just did it. And it's like, he can't go to the Super Bowl. He went to the NFC Championship game. So you're basically saying that he can't take one more step. And I would say on the right team in the right situation, he absolutely can make that step. So that's where we have a difference of opinion.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's 100% it. They say whatever you want. I saw somebody. There's been a lot of talk about cover one robber is going to shut. That is going to give.
Right.
And I mean, okay.
It sounds awesome. It sounds like football esoteric. Like, oh, this one thing is going to shut. If he can do this, he's conquered all. If he can't do this, then get him out of there. It's like,
yeah, and
really.
And, they pointed to the game against the playoffs against the Seahawks and the Cowboys as examples of it. And shit, the guy completed 37 of 59 passes, 546 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. They only scored 19 points against the Dallas Cowboys, but the Dallas Cowboys were one of the best teams in the league. So yeah, they're going to struggle a little bit against them. But guess what? They also went 90 plus yards for a touchdown to win the game. So
they had 2 long drives in the second half of that Dallas game that won them the game.
Absolutely. So it's just, yes, there are things that are going to give players trouble. And that's where having a coach like Kyle Shanahan hopefully fixes it. And I would point to when people say, well, they didn't win the Super Bowl. Well, yeah, because I thought that Kyle Shanahan's scheme in that game, especially the play that they ran that in which Brock Purdy was injured on, was a bad design. It was a bad choice that was a bad play call in the way that they were trying to execute it in that point in the game. Maybe at totally, at any point in that game, given the way that the Eagles attack, it just to say that they didn't get to the Super Bowl because of Brock Purdy last year is a intellectually disingenuous discussion.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's a team. Come on, it's a team sport. The guy had an amazing run, and if you made him available. There's all kinds of teams in the league that would be like, give him to us. We'll take him. Yeah. All right, let's move off of this topic because we've beaten it down. Who in your mind has stood out at the OTAs? Who stood out to you outside of the quarterbacks? Let's get beyond Trey and Sam and the whole quarterback discussion. Outside of the quarterbacks, give me some guys that have stood out to you at the OTAs. We've seen a couple different practices now.
Yeah, outside of the quarterbacks, I would say Jordan Mason. He really looked. I mean, obviously Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey, I think, is this generation's version of Jerry Rice in the way that he practices. But outside of McCaffrey, Jordan Mason looks like he's the second best back on the team right now. He's been very solid. I really like what we've seen out of Jordan Mason.
He looks lighter and faster, doesn't he?
He does. I mean, he's just a really, he's quick. He has a good burst. We saw him catch the ball a couple of times on Wednesday. Brandon Ayuk, just, he looks like he's out there doing Brandon Ayuk things. You look at the offensive line and Spencer Burford and the size that he's put on and what he's doing. I think if he can settle in at right guard and he can play all those downs, that's going to be really helpful for the 49ers. Over on the defensive side of the ball, you look at the cornerbacks. Deommodore Lenoir looks good. The other kid, Darrell Luter Jr., he's kind of struggling a little bit. He's having some hard times with guys getting behind him. I got the train's blasting his horn over here. He's excited. He likes my takes. That's why he's honking the horn so much. He's probably watching our show as we're talking. But so I would say, on the deep, we haven't seen enough of those guys yet. I'd like to see a little bit more of Jair Brown. I mean, he looks good running around, but we haven't really seen him be able to make a play yet. It was good to hear that he's had some interceptions. Heard that on Wednesday, but none of that's come in front of the media, so we're not sure quite what we've got there. So I think those are some of the bigger ones. Drake Jackson is my guy. I said this last week. I feel like he's gonna bust out. He's the breakout guy for this season. He's got the size. He's doing all the work. I found it a little interesting to hear that he's only doing 315 on the bench press and like 415 on the squats. Come on, Drake, you got to be strong. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I used to work out quite a bit until COVID hit, and I was doing 315. I was only doing it once, but Come on,
Damn,
man.
Jack. I lifted weights all through college. The most I could ever get up on the bench was 275. So, two plates and a quarter.
That's that's the difference. So first off, Drake Jackson's a lot bigger than me in terms of height. So he's got him and you guys both have to push the bar farther than I am. I'm kind of, I'm more of a short and stocky guy, so I don't have this far to push it.
I'll say this: arm length matters in bench. I've got 33 and a half inch arms, so I do have really, really long arms. I remember I used to block my brother's shot. He was 6'6", 6'5", 6'6". But yeah, if you have short arms, you can put out, you're not moving it from your chest to full extension very far.
Exactly.
And you can typically do more,
yeah.
But still, so you're thinking 315. He should have been in that three plates club long. 3 plates is 305. He should have been in the 305 club long ago, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he should have. Come on, Drake. You gotta get going. No, but I know.
How about a jackhammer Drake Jackson liftoff?
Oh, he'd kill me.
That'd be awesome.
You put that on the bar right now, you'd have to come and save me because that thing would be stuck on my chest. I'm talking back a couple of years ago, like I said, before COVID was hitting, and I was in the gym all the time. But no, right now Drake would take me, could throw me across the room. It looked like one of those those things where where it looks like he's throwing a dummy up against the wall. That would be if Drake got mad at me. That's what I'd look like.
Drake stands out. There's no question. Yeah. He's really looked great. I mean, he has looked fantastic. He's put on upper body weight. He says he's about 262. I said to him, how much weight have you put on? He said about 13 pounds. He's an interesting prospect on the weight front because if you go back to SC, he had a year where he played light. He had a year where he played at almost 275. So his weight did fluctuate. He doesn't look like super ripped right now. But he definitely looks a little bigger in the upper body. But to me, it's the combination of he's moving so much more confidently, and his explosiveness and ability to flatten to the quarterback is just impressive. So you add some upper body weight, maybe that gives him a little confidence, and he hasn't lost any speed. He just looks like a guy who's ready to absolutely take off. And when you throw in Hargrave and Armstead and Bosa as the other 3 starters on that D line, it would not shock me if Drake wound up with 10 sacks because I think, the pocket shape is going to look different this year because of the presence of Javon Hargrave. And quarterbacks are going to be looking to sneak out that side door, and they ain't going to be running towards Bosa. So, they're going to be running towards Drake. I think if Drake just, he keeps his eyes on the ball, and just plays with good awareness as a rusher, he's going to fall into a half dozen sacks just based on who he's playing with. If he really gets it done, he may have a dozen.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying there, in terms of the sacks, I don't know if 10 he could get there. Like you said, when you watch Drake Jackson, you look at the sacks that he got last year, they were all kind of second effort sacks. It was coming from somebody else pressuring the quarterback, and he was able to make the play. And with all the pressure they're going to get, especially if Eric Armstead is healthy as well, in that middle with Javon Hargrave, and you got Nick Bosa on the other side. If those 3 guys are working, then they're going to just be feeding guys. It's just going to be a feeding frenzy towards Drake Jackson. He's going to be able to clean up the plate and put them away and stack them up.
Smitty corrects me. He says 3 plates is not 305, Krug. It's 315. You're right, Smitty. You're right. Yeah. J Dub says 3 plates is my dinner at Pig and a Pickle.
That's a good one.
I remember there was a guy that used to be at the gym that we used to work at. We used to work out at this hole in the wall place in Sacramento at Sac State called Body Mechanics. And there was a guy there that he grunted so loud during lifting that we used to joke that, he didn't need anybody to spot him because he had like a dual personality. He'd literally be talking to himself. You can do it. You can do it. You can freaking it was just ridiculous. I remember one of the guys at LA Workout in Sacramento who was just jacked. And this guy was super jacked. He always had a jug of water walking around. And we're like, dude, his name was Pika. We're like, Pika, man, you're jacked. And he's like, you don't want it like I want it. And I'm like, Pika, nobody wants it like you want it. it was awesome. I could do a whole comedy routine on weightlifting culture. The couple guys that have really stood out to me, Danny Gray looks stronger, better, more confident. I think there's a whole nother level that Danny Gray's getting to this summer. And the other guy that really I didn't like on draft day, but man, he is opening my eyes, is Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell's dad is a wide receiver coach in college right now. And so you watch this kid and you're like, he's got ordinary size, he's got ordinary length, he's got ordinary speed. There's nothing extraordinary about anything about him physically at first glance. And then he starts running routes. And it's like this guy catches everything. And he's got great concentration. He's got great hands. He plucks it with his hands. He doesn't body catch it. He catches it in a crowd. We'll see if he can take a hit from NFL DBs and hold on. But Ronnie Bell had not a great day the other day, had a couple drops. But, I mean, those are the first drops I've seen from him. And then when I watch his Michigan film, the array of different balls that he catches really stands out. This guy's, it's not like he's got one route that he's just so great at. And you see that sometimes. Guy runs a slant route and he runs it perfectly, but then he doesn't run the full tree. This guy can run on any number of routes, and he runs them really precise. He knows how to kind of sink his hips into the break point. There's a lot of he's a very refined rookie, and that is, if you look at rookie receivers, they generally struggle in the NFL. Why? Because the level of refinement required to get open in college and pros is night and day. But the fact that this kid's dad, I think, is the wide receiver coach at like Southwest Missouri State or something, you can see this guy is an instructional video on how to play the position. Ronnie Bell's got a real shot to make the team, and I don't know whose job he's going to take, Jack, but those receivers better show up in this summer. I mean, Debo's on the team, and Ayuk's on the team. Everybody else better buckle the chin straps and show up ready to go, or Ronnie Bell's going to take your job.
Yeah, I thought that Ronnie Bell looked really good. In during the rookie minicamp, he looked really good in week 1 of OTAs. And you're right, he struggled a little bit this last practice on Wednesday with a couple of drops on throws from Lance. But overall, there's a lot to really like about him. So when you start to look at that wide receiver position, I do think he's somebody that's going to definitely be pushing for a spot on this roster. And I agree as far as the competitiveness of this. You just look at the way that he goes about it. If he can get back to the point where he was weeks 1 and 2, that's why one of the fun things about this is we're watching these guys in snapshots. We kind of saw some progression from him week 1, week 2. It was kind of all arrows up, and then you had a little bit of a dip this week. So now how does it respond next week when we see him on Tuesday, I believe it is, in week 3? And then how is he going to look when we get to minicamp? Can these guys continue to – there's going to be ups and downs, but can they continue on a trend that's going in the right direction? Ronnie Bell is definitely one of those players to keep an eye on.
One of the lines that stood out to me yesterday came from Bobby Turner, the running back coach, who throws around compliments of young players like manhole covers. I mean, he just doesn't compliment young players. But Lindsay Polaris asked him a question. She said, "What's the upside potential of Jordan Mason?" And Bobby T said, "Limitless." And that was like, whoa. Bobby T says Jordan Mason has limitless upside and limitless potential. And I see kind of a poor man's Marshawn Lynch. Did they underutilize Jordan Mason? And how do you see running back this year? I mean, McCaffrey's a superstar, and he's demonstrating that. He's on a different level. And then you got Elijah Mitchell, who's very dependable. I think he's only fumbled once in his career. You got Leyburn and Awatt. Still got TDP from last year, and you got Jordan Mason. What do you think? What's a reasonable workload for Jordan Mason? I mean, it seems like the Niners could have, if they needed him, they could have gotten him on the field more last year. I think he could be a force, a real force, like maybe, a phenomenal running back, one of the better running backs. and he didn't barely got on the field. And then when he did, he busted a big one against, was it Seattle in the playoffs? Give me your thoughts on what you think workload wise we may see from Jordan Mason.
Yeah, you look last year at Christian McCaffrey and the second, during the end of part of the season, what he did with the 49ers. I think he was right around 20 catches or 20 touches between running and catching per game. And I think you'd want to take a little bit off of that maybe over the course of a 17-game season. Try to keep him more in that 15, 17 range, somewhere around there. So that's where you can get a few more carries for Jordan Mason. He's going to compete with Elijah Mitchell for the number 2 back. And Mitchell's shown that he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And so if Mason can come in here and if he can just take the job, he's making the most of his opportunities. I think that's the biggest piece is every time. And I think Kyle Shanahan likes that about these guys, right? If you get an opportunity and you can step in and you show that you can do it, he seems to really like that. I mean, what football coach doesn't really, right? But that's what you're seeing from Jordan Mason. So if you can get him the ball 5, give him 5 carries a game. I think would be good, like a good number around 5 to 7 for Jordan Mason. The other thing that's nice about him is he doesn't show a need to have a high volume of carries to get into the flow. It seems like he can come in and right off the bat, he's hitting the hole. So that's the other reason. I think, look at him to be your number 2, number 3 back, get that, 5 to 7 carries a game right in that ballpark. And I think that's a good deal. And the other part is, he has shown the ability to make some plays with his hands so far this offseason as well. If that can continue, that just puts him right there more in the conversation for that number 2 back.
They have some great depth of weapons, don't they? Ton of backs, ton of receivers. Now they got a bunch of tight ends as well. Mm-hmm. Bay Area Baller 18. What's up, Baller? He says Yannick Ngakoue said he wants to play for a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
Come here.
No.
Wait a second. Let me think of one. How about the Niners?
I disagree with that. I don't think Yannick Ngakoue should come to the 49ers. I don't think the 49ers should really go after him.
Go ahead. Give me your reasoning.
The reasoning is Ngakoue has put up good numbers throughout his career, but Ngakoue has also put up big numbers as a result of playing a high number of snaps. So if the 49ers really like Drake Jackson, if they believe in Drake Jackson for the long term, that he's the guy, and they're going to want to get him that 60 to 70% of the snaps, the better choice instead of Ngakoue is Justin Houston. I don't know if he signed with anybody recently, but okay. Justin Houston is the guy that's shown the ability to come on and make plays without needing to have a high volume of snaps. All these other pass rushers that are out there, the big name guys, Leonard Floyd.
How about Pierre Paul?
I don't know about Jason Pierre Paul because I didn't really study kind of his stuff. He might fit in that mold too. I think for the 49ers, if you are sold on Drake Jackson, the guy that you're looking to find to bring in is a guy that can come in and just give you 20%, 30% of the defensive snaps, right? You just put him in some situations as a rotational guy that can come in and make plays right off the bat. Think about, like, I know this is old school, the 94 team that had Ricky Jackson, right? Ricky Jackson wasn't playing every down, but he'd come on the field and he'd make a mess of the defense, of the backfield and the offense because he was able to get pressure. You need a guy. I think the 49ers, if they're going to add a vet, it needs to be a guy that has shown the ability to put up numbers without having to play a high volume to get there.
And that's a good one. That's a nuance, and that matters because you're right. It's a different deal when you play in a rotation than when when you're getting the entire game. And yet they lost Emmenihue and they lost Ebukam and they lost Jordan Willis. And man, it just seems like, that's 700 snaps went out the door. And I don't, it's not that I don't like Cleveland Farrell or Austin Bryant. I just think that it's not a net gain. It's a net loss at this juncture. If they could find one more guy to throw in that mix, but maybe Beal's that guy. If Beal really can bend the edge and be a speed rusher, even if he's somewhat of a one-trick pony, it doesn't matter to me. It's okay. He's got, as long as he can do what he does, which is show that 4.4 speed and really burn the edge and stretch out that offensive line by being a great threat as a speed rusher. That right there, I think, would be a major thing. But to me, I'd love to see one more defensive end And I'm open-minded as far as who it could be. The other thing that really stood out was I talked to Johnny Holland yesterday. He really likes his rookie linebackers a lot.
Yeah.
And when I asked him about Jalen Graham and D Winters, and he's just like, yeah, I mean, these guys are fast. They're taken to our defense. We got a great linebacker room. And I mentioned to Johnny, I'm like, Johnny, the cuts are going to be brutal here. And he's like, yeah. I mean, there's no question. They got 3 really good special team linebackers. They got 2 stars in Warner and Greenlaw. And then they've got 3 really good young linebackers in Marcelino McCrary-Ball, Jalen Graham, and D Winters. I'm just, I'm glad I don't have to make those cuts because, I mean, all those guys can play. And even all their special team linebackers can all play. Curtis Robinson is a really good special teamer. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles is a really good special teamer. They signed Burks. Burks showed things from special teams and from scrimmage last year. What linebacker is going to get squeezed here? But give me your thoughts of what you've seen so far out of Jalen Graham out of Purdue, who Scott McCloughan singled out as a guy that he really likes. And damn, if McCloughan's not on it, I mean, Graham has looked like a ton on the field. He's smooth. He's fast. He's got swagger. And then D Winters, I thought this week looked noticeably better than the first week of the OTAs and definitely better than he looked in the rookie minicamp. And, you're talking about a guy who was the defensive MVP of the national semi, very productive linebacker with 4.4 speed himself. So what do you think of Graham? What do you think of Winters? And what do you think of Marcelino?
I think that's the thing. The 49ers, man, you look at this linebacker group, it's
stacked.
They're absolutely stacked. Really quick on like Jalen Graham and D Winters. I think it's really easy to slot those guys in as, especially like Jalen Graham, right? You look at Jalen Graham, you look at the way he's built, you look at the way he moves, and he reminds me a lot of Fred Warner. And then you have D Winters, a little bit shorter, a little bit stockier. And the way he moves, he reminds me a lot of Dre Greenlaw there. So, you watch, I'm looking forward to seeing when we put the pads on and they start to actually have to thump and they're actually having to make plays in the hole and that kind of thing. Which of these guys is going to be able to do it against the run? Because I think when it comes to what we're seeing right now, which is mostly coverage, Jalen Graham, I think, is the better of the two when it comes to coverage. I want to see what the whole package looks like, but I really like that. And then Marcelino McCrary-Ball, he's right there. There's been no Fred Warner and no Jay Greenlaw with the first defense so far in either of the days we've been able to see. But you got Marcelino McCrary-Ball right there in the middle with Oren Burks and Curtis Robinson on the other side. And he's holding down. He's quick, and he showed out last year in training camp. He showed out during the preseason. It's a reason why they kept him around. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can bring. There's going to be a really good linebacker that's going to get left off of this roster.
No doubt. And to me, I think there's a couple spots where you may see Lynch make a trade in the middle of preseason and because they'll have a couple players that are more coveted than your typical cut down players, and they might be able to get a 7th round pick for one of these backers, and maybe a couple other guys as well. We'll see how this thing gets pared down. Get 2 last ones before we let you go. We appreciate you spending time with us. Hope you guys are enjoying the simulcast. Myself and Jack here on both of our channels. What are you looking for in the next round of OTAs? Is there some particular question you want to see answered? Is there some player you want to see focus on a little bit more than maybe you have in the first 2 go rounds? What are you looking for this next round?
For me, I kind of hit on it earlier. It's just which guys are consistent or which guys are showing growth from one practice to the next. I think that's the biggest thing that I kind of keep an eye on here because I put out a bunch of guys who showed out during the rookie minicamp and they looked good in week 1, and then we're there in week 2, and I don't really see them, quite as much. And maybe it's because of the offensive line and defensive line. We're actually working with the quarterbacks a little bit more. I'm not sure what it was, but I just want to see the continued growth of these guys from week 1 to week 2 and now week 3 as we get into minicamp. Which guys I want to see the quarterbacks separate from each other. I think that's a big one. I want to see Jair Brown. I want to see him make a play. We haven't seen him, like I said, It's not bad, right? There's nothing bad about it because the bad is the guys are getting behind him and he's giving the big plays. We haven't seen that, but I want to see him around the ball where we see him, maybe knock a pass down, maybe get an interception, that kind of thing. And I want to see Darrell Luter Jr. I want to see him not get beat deep because he's been beat deep now both practices that we've seen. So I want to see if he can maybe start to do a better job of keeping those receivers behind him, in front of him. I mean, instead of getting behind him actually. So those are a couple of the takeaways, and I want to see if this week if Jake Moody can actually put the ball out of the practice facility, because he came really close on that one kick.
What a leg, man! That guy's got power in the leg. It's so readily apparent, isn't it?
No, there's a definite difference between the ball coming off of his foot and Zane Gonzalez. That thing comes off his foot. It looks like it's been literally shot out of a cannon. It sounds like it too, with the way that, it's just such a powerful leg. There's a big difference. There's been a lot of talk about the Frontiers using a draft pick there. If the trend from that we've seen so far, if it continues on and he's able to be consistent with the accuracy portion, they have a new weapon on offense as far as putting points on the board. They're not going to have to worry about getting into that 40 to 50 yard range. They're going to be able to hit from 50 and 60 yards out.
Okay, I want to see something from Cameron Latou.
Yes.
I want to see something. I want to see either him be real physical blocking somebody. I want to see him catch the ball. I want to see him, catch the ball, turn up field and run. I want to see something from Latou. I also want to see something from Braden Willis. And the other two, I think there's something there with these undrafted rookie running backs. We're not really going to get a sense of this, I think, until the actual games. This is the way running backs are. Running backs in practice, the defense knows where you're going. It's hard to really kind of show out. McCaffrey is a special human being for sure, and he stands out, but it's more for his effort than anything else. But when I watched the college film of Ronald Awatt from UTEP and Kalen Laburn from Marshall, I saw NFL caliber backs. I want to see those guys run the ball, and it might not be until this summer, but I want to see both of the young tight ends. I want to see both of the young running backs. Those are the guys and I'd like to see a little bit of Robert Beal and see that incredible speed. I want to see. I've watched Beal, but I don't see like on the field that 4.4 speed that he timed out as. And I want to see a little bit of that. I want to see Beal show that speed, and I want to see the two young rookie tight ends and the two young rookie running backs. What do you think of it? What do you think of the young backs, by the way? Have you seen anything from Awatt or Laburn that you like?
Well, I was just going to say real quick, first off, that's a good call on Robert Beal. I want to see, I do think we need to see a little bit more out of him. You walk by the different drills and those kind of things, you hear, little bits from the coaches, what they're yelling at these guys and what they're trying to get them to do. And you've got that with Beal. I think they're wanting to see him get off the ball better. I think they're wanting to see that get the F off of the ball kind of, thing that drew them to making him the draft pick. And I don't know if he's really shown that quite yet. As far as the running backs, I haven't been as impressed as some others in terms of what we've seen from them. What I'd like to see when you watch the running backs, we didn't really get a chance to see them run the ball much during the team portion, but we did get to see, TDP with one, and it never fails when you watch Ty Davis Price run. He's going to run up somebody's back, and then he's going to cut. He doesn't ever make the cut just off of the air. It almost seems like he always has to hit somebody before he cuts, and that's the one thing that I saw with LeBourne. He's only had the one carry in the little bits of team drills that they had, and on Wednesday, that's what we saw. He ran into somebody's back and then made the cut. Got to be able to see that hole a little bit ahead of time, right? So, and then you also had a drop by Awatt from Lance on Wednesday. So we know that these guys are all good backs, and that running back room, we're really not going to get a good visual. It's once we get the pads on, once they're actually able to get hit, that's when we're gonna get to see a little bit more out of them. And I'll just say, like, for me, like, neither Awatt or LeBourne or Jordan Mason, they're not like that type of back, or even Elijah Mitchell. those two guys were both. Mitchell, to me, he stood out right away. The minute I started watching him during training camp in 2021, he showed something to me. Last year during OTAs and minicamp, you saw something in Jordan Mason with his explosiveness and his cuts and those types of things and the way that he ran the ball. And I haven't quite seen that yet out of either of the two rookies. Maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe I need to pay closer attention next week.
All right. Couple of chats. Pumpkin Seed said Larry is Ronnie Bell's agent. We get this one from No Flav. Larry and Jack, what's your 40 time? My 40 time is tracked with a sundial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Joey Nichols says Larry used to run a 4.4, but now he's a little bit older. He's only running in the 4.6s. Try 14.6. That would be that. And then we get this one from Artur says, which linebacker can we stash in the practice squad and clear waivers? I would say it's probably the special teams guys. Curtis Robinson, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, those guys I think sneak through waivers way better than Jalen Graham or D. Winters. And then we've got one good question here from the chat. Batman29 says, Larry, we need to talk about Kyle's overuse of Christian McCaffrey. They definitely need to rotate their backs better this season, lighten up McCaffrey's load. I totally agree with this. When you have this kind of depth of running backs, utilize it. I know you got, I'm sure the Niners, they traded a 2, a 3, and a 4, or was it 3 pretty good picks for CMC. So you want to make sure that you're getting, good use out of him. And I understand that. And he is a star and he deserves the lion's share of the reps, but you got Elijah Mitchell and you got Jordan Mason and you got some other guys. It's like, make sure you get, I thought he looked good against Philly, but to me, I would have loved to have seen him utilized a little bit less in the regular season. So he'd be a little fresher. And because to me, a super fresh Christian McCaffrey is a dominator and can win games almost by himself. So don't get to the playoffs with a dinged up McCaffrey. Do what you got to do to spread those carries around so that McCaffrey gets to the playoffs in full throttle. Because if you can get to the playoffs with full throttle McCaffrey, you got a shot. You got a real shot.
Yeah, and I think that's where the growth of a guy like Jordan Mason can help with that, because you start to get in these games in the fourth quarter and you're up. You don't necessarily need to keep McCaffrey on the field to grind out the clock. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. The more a guy like Jordan Mason or even Elijah Mitchell, if he's healthy, that allows you to maybe give McCaffrey a few less touches, allow him to get to the sideline a little bit. So that's why it's important when you start to look at what Mason's doing as far as his ability to catch the football. That's a big piece of being able to stay on the field for these running backs, is their ability to do everything that's asked in this offense, right? We talk about all the different things that the quarterbacks are asked to do and all these different players. That's one of them when it comes to the running back spot, is you've got to be able to pass protect. You've got to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. And I think you start to get into year 2 now with Mason, and I think you might be able to see him start to take some of that weight off of McCaffrey. It's a good thing to point out there for sure.
Last one, bold prediction for this summer in training camp or preseason. Give me a bold prediction that maybe right now we'd go, what? Really? But you know what? By the time it comes to July and August, we'll be saying, damn, Jack was on it. Jack knew. Give me your bold prediction.
I have to make it needs to be bold for you guys to do that. Come on now.
Well, it could be anything. It could be anything. I'll go first if you want to think about it for a second. I'll go first. I'll give you a couple bold predictions. Here are my bold predictions. Ronnie Bell somehow makes this team and is a contributor on a regular basis, which for a 7th round rookie in a loaded wide receiver room, where on a team that took 5 wide receivers last year, and I still don't necessarily know exactly who he beats out. But to me, Ronnie Bell is real, and he is going to be not just on the team, he's going to be an important player on the team, not in the future, this year. So I'll make a bold prediction that Ronnie Bell makes the team and is a big player for them this year, not in the future, this year. That's bold prediction number 1. Bold prediction number 2. Spencer Wagee is going to be one of the talks of camp in the preseason. There's too much there. He potentially could be a significant player for the 49ers on their defensive line. The motor, the get off, the explosiveness, the experience at defensive end. I would not be shocked if Spencer Wagee was getting significant run opposite Nick Bosa on this defensive line at defensive end. Okay, that's bold prediction number 2. And bold prediction number 3, I'm going to say that Jair Brown beats out Talanoa Hufanga for the starting strong safety job.
Wow. Okay.
Those are my 3 bold ones. Jair, Wagee, and Ronnie Bell.
Well, that last one is a major bold prediction. I'm going to go with. Oh yeah. You got these are some really good ones here. I should have been writing them down as I was listening to you talk. I don't think Jair Brown is going to necessarily beat out Talanoa Hufanga. I think Jair Brown is going to could possibly start alongside Talanoa Hufanga. That would be the one that I would go with there. In terms of the defensive line, I'm going to say the improvement of Javon Kinlaw is going to be something that's going to be talked about this offseason. His ability to come on. And
did I say that Brown would start over Gibson, right?
No, you said that's why I took a step back.
I meant Gibson. Did
Yes.
I say Hufanga?
You did. That's okay.
No, I meant yeah, because I got Charlie here saying, yeah, I think he means Gibson. Yeah, no. Yep. Jair Brown will start with Talanoa Hufanga over Tayshaun Gibson. My bad.
Yep. No, that's good. No, I'm glad we got that because I said, whoa, that's a big
yeah,
one.
That's crazy talk.
I like that one. I think that's a really good one. The other one that I was going to say that it involves the secondary. Isaiah Oliver is going to be a big improvement for the 49ers in the slot over what they received in that position over the last couple of years, whether it's Jimmy Ward or the guy that's out in Denver now. He's going to be a big improvement there. Not only his ability to cover, which I think is going to be an improvement, but his ability to blitz and his ability to make plays around the line of scrimmage. You look at what he did with Atlanta last year in good numbers. As a cover guy, better than Ward, and he was actually able to get into the backfield and make some plays as well. So I really like Isaiah Oliver there.
That's a good call. And Oliver was really mature, and the Niners got Oliver at exactly the right time. He's coming off of his best year. He's really comfortable in the slot. I think you're right. I think he's going to be a better cover man than Jimmy was.
Yeah, I think so. And then Colton McKivitz at right tackle is going to be a surprise. I think, that's a position we're hearing a lot of questions about the 49ers offensive line. I think we're going to see Colton McKivitz step up and he's going to be able to perform and give you at least what Mike McGlinchey gave you last season. I think that's kind of a bold prediction just based off of McKivitz and the lack of starts that we've been able to see of him so far. But I think he's going to be able to step in and he's going to be able to give you McGlinchey in pass protection, and he's going to be as good, if not possibly even a little bit better when it comes to the run blocking side. So I think those are a couple of bold predictions. Just trying to think if there's any others that I'm going to say. Yeah, here it is. Brock Purdy starts week 1 and he's a Pro Bowler.
We got this one from the chat. Bold prediction: our defense is going to break Philly's sack record this year. Oh my God,
that's a really big one.
That's really big. I would say 60 sacks would be great. A great number. 70. Come on. I don't see it. I don't see it. But you never know. You never know. Jack, awesome stuff. Tell people what you got cooking on your channel coming up either later today or what do you got planned in the next few days? You take the weekends off or you grind through? What's your game plan this week?
No, usually the weekends right now are a little bit more low key just because we've got training camp coming up around the corner, and once that hits, it's really busy. Plus, I got a long commute every day when I go back and forth. So I'm not home very much once practices start or on days that we have practice now. So when training camp comes, I know it's going to be crazy. So try to take the weekends off, but keep it locked into the channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have your notifications on, because there's going to be videos that are going to go up. I'm sure I'm going to be posting something else up there. There's always topics to be discussing, and I've been doing a lot of shorter hits, and I think those work well for people who don't have the time to really sit and see the whole, watch me talk for 45 minutes or an hour. So we got that going on, but then also get yourselves over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. That's the Inside the 49er blog. I'm going to be having I'm working on an article right now with some stuff on the 49ers quarterback situation, specifically Brock Purdy, with basically from the eyes of a former 49ers head quarterback.
Jack, awesome stuff, man. We love streaming with you. Have a great rest of your Friday. Beat the heat out there in the valley, and we'll see you next. We get a media day next week in the OTAs.
I believe it'll be Tuesday, but I haven't heard anything specifically from the 49ers. But I also haven't checked in the last 24 hours.
But there will be one, you think?
There will be. They have to let us in at least one day. If they have 3 days of practice, they have to at least let us in one. So that's what they've been doing. So I would expect, based on what the schedule looks like, they're supposed to be there Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Based off the way this is right now, I think we'll be there on Tuesday.
Good stuff. Jack, thanks for the time, man.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Thanks for having me.
There you go. Jack Hammer. Fantastic. He is fantastic. Follow him at the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Follow him on YouTube as well. He's got a big time channel and he does a great job. All right, let's thank our sponsors. We are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. Here's what they look like in Marin.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. It is 5 to 2 in the afternoon. Thanks to Jack Hammer. Thanks to all of you for joining me on the Krug Show. Third String All-Pro says, Larry, peeking behind the sausage. Yeah, we had that vertical ad right there in the middle, but I like to use the vertical ad every now and then as well. We've got this one Third String Sausage says, our Third String All Pro says, Third String Sausage. Larry has the best ending theme song in the business. You're liking the Telmetric song, I know. Laugh till you pee, which is a really nice handle. Says, Larry, is this the last show of the day? I don't know. It's kind of early in the day for the last show of the day, but it is Friday. My kid did finish up high school. Congratulations to Ben for finishing Northgate junior year. Today was the final day of school for Northgate. So I don't know. I might take my kid out tonight and celebrate the end of the school year and the beginning of the summer. Remember how great that was as a kid? I mean, now it's like every day is like every other day. We all just keep grinding. We just keep working. But remember as a kid, man, you'd sit there and be like, tomorrow's the last day of school. Oh, we're going to be out for summer, and summer's going to last forever. It's going to be awesome. Those were good days. But today is a great day for a lot of kids. If today is the final day of your school year, congratulations on making it through whatever school you attend, and enjoy your summer and try to appreciate it. And all those things you say you want to do, don't just say you want to do them. Go do them. Go do them. Make sure you do your summer reading. I always hated the summer reading. We had the worst summer reading in high school too. It's like, go read the Iliad or the Odyssey or something. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to go rafting. I want to go swimming. I want to set off a bunch of fireworks in the sand dunes with my buddies. Oh, now I'm talking out of school. But yeah, I don't know. We may be going later today. I did talk to Dave Lombardi about stopping by on the Krug show, and we're not sure when we're going to do that. Maybe today, maybe this weekend at some point. Grant is going to stop by tomorrow, and I think I'll be stopping by his show. We'll be doing a live stream tomorrow, so look for that as well. So we may go. I may go post game tonight on the Giants. I may dial up a little Giants post game. Giants are playing well. Didn't expect that. By the way, for any of you who, some of you guys are just Niner people, I get it. But last night we did a live stream after the NBA Finals Game 1. And how about them Niners? I've always wanted to rob a bank. Thanks, Larry. Yeah, go rob that bank. For all of you out there who wanted to rob a liquor store or a bank, go out there and do it. No. Do not break any laws, please. And don't blame me if you do. But no, we had a live stream last night after NBA Finals Game 1, which was won by the Nuggets over the Miami Heat. And we had Frank Red on, and we had Danny, Coach Emilio, and we also had Ned Coletti on. And we talked about everything. We talked about Bob Myers and him stepping down, the different, inherent conflicts of the GM-coach relationship, got into Barry Bonds, a lot of discussion about life, about baseball, about NBA. It was just a lot of good stuff. It was one of my favorite live streams that we've done. I've been doing this since March of 2022. So we're now in June of 2023. So we've been doing this for about 14 months. And last night's live stream with Dan and Red and Ned was one of my favorites. We just had a really good discussion, and it went in a lot of different directions. So anyway, I know there are people out there that, they're big Niner fans and they like the Niner content, and they don't necessarily care about basketball discussions or Giants or that kind of stuff, baseball. And I get it. But Ned Coletti is a former GM of the Dodgers, former assistant GM of the Giants. Just gives a great perspective. And, Danny and Frank have been friends for a long time as well. And we just had a real fun discussion last night. It was kind of organic and weaved back and forth through different topics. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. And all the guys on the live stream really enjoyed it as well. I got great reviews from them. So very cool. Very cool. I would definitely encourage all of you to go check that out. All right, let's read a couple chats before we get out of here. Let's see. Tommy Huxley. Larry, why did the Giants always have trouble with Pittsburgh? I don't know if they always have trouble with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's kind of an also ran, but it's Major League Baseball. I mean, yeah, it's tough to win. Period. Against anybody, any day. And that old saying in baseball is probably more true than other sports. Anybody can beat anybody on any single given day. It's really hard to sweep a team, and the Pirates are having a nice little surprising year. Orioles too. So, I think that's it more than anything. I remember when the Giants used to have Jack Clark. Now I'm showing my age. The dude, he owned Three Rivers, and he would go in there and hit like 550, and the Giants would go sweep the Pirates. Waveware says, love your basketball panel, Larry. Yeah, I did too, man. Bay Area Baller, one of my favorites. JD, we had Damon Bruce on, Carl Foster, Cyrus, all these guys. All their perspectives were damn good. And towards the end, we just started getting everybody's perspective all at the same time. Some people would say it was overcrowded, but you know what? I like it that way. Now, granted, it's not the same dynamic as if you have one other person on, you're asking questions. You can get more done in a one-on-one live stream than a 6-person live stream. But I'll put our basketball post game up against any basketball post game that there was on radio, television, anywhere. I love what 95.7 The Game does. Oh, by the way, check me out there. I'm sitting in for Willard next Thursday and Friday, or maybe next Friday. I'm not sure if Thursday is going to be part of it. But next Friday, catch me with Dibs on in Afternoon Drive on 95.7 The Game. Just communicated with their program director about that little fill-in shift, so that's coming up next week. We'll be back in Santa Clara all next week for more Niner OTAs. Really excited to bring that to you. I'm trying to chase down an interview with Adam Peters to talk a little bit more with one of the 49ers personnel heads on the young players and get his perspective, because Lynch and Peters have done an amazing job. There's no way other to say that. I mean, in the entire time that Lynch has been running the Niners drafts, it's like 6 drafts, they've acquired on this. We're talking about starters, not just guys on the roster, starters, guys who have actually started games for the 49ers. 22 starters produced by Lynch and Peters and Shanahan and the Niners personnel department in the draft that came from day 3, so round 4 through 7, or as undrafted free agents. 22. That is a fat number. That is a huge number. I mean, think about it. Day 1 is round 1, day 2 is round 2 and 3, but you get guys off day 3. And that's how the 49ers have done it, despite having all these great individual players and picking last in the draft, or not last, but towards the back of the round most years because of success in the regular season. They've done it by hitting on George Kittle and DJ Jones and Brock Purdy and Jeff Wilson and Azeez Al-Shaair and Kevin Givens. And it's an amazing number of guys that Niner, 22 players. So Peters and Lynch they got great momentum. And to me, that's been the secret sauce to the Niners run here. You say run, they haven't won any Super Bowls. So what? They've been in 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games. They're annually one of the deepest teams in the NFL. And how are they doing it? Day 3 picks becoming starters, undrafted free agents becoming starters. Incredible. One other thing that I saw the other day, and I just love it, and I got to put this out there. We've all watched The Football Life on the NFL Network. If you get a chance, they've been showing it the last week a number of times. The Football Life that you got to go watch again is Pat Tillman. And I'm a Bay Area guy. My dad was in the Army. So I'm definitely, Pat Tillman's story really hits home for me. But if there is a person who played sports in our society that we don't talk about enough and we don't celebrate enough, it's Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman. Go watch the Pat Tillman Football Life. I'm very proud to say that he is a Bay Area guy. As a Bay Area guy myself, I take great pride. I beam with pride saying that Pat Tillman came from our area. Pat Tillman's football life and what he gave up and what he sacrificed and how he lived and how he died. An incredible story. We talk about other athletes way too much. You turn on these shows, it's too much about LeBron, it's too much about Brady, it's too much about Kyrie, it's too much. Pat Tillman should be talked about more, and he should be celebrated more. How many guys did what he did? How many guys walk away from NFL riches to go serve their country out of just a belief that they should? How many guys turn down millions of dollars in guaranteed contracts to go fight in Afghanistan? Amazing. Pat Tillman. What an incredible football life. I saw that the other night. I taped it because I was doing something else at the end. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to see all of this. And now I have it on my DVR, and I'm like, I've watched it 3 times. An amazing football life. An amazing sacrifice that guy made. Very, very special person. So I know the NFL Network's got a bunch of these in the offseason, the football life, and they're all good. I love the one on Jerome Brown and Reggie White. Love the one on Dwight Clark. Love the one on Bill Walsh. I mean, there's a lot of really good ones. They all take a back seat, in my mind, to Pat Tillman, the football life. Huge respect for Pat Tillman. Last night, Voltron says, yeah, you guys talked about everything except the Niners last night. I know. What can I say? Tommy Huxley says, Waveware, definitely a great panel. No Flav says, I wish Larry and Hensley were cool again. I like both. I'm cool with him. He's just not cool with me. So we'll leave it at that. I told Grant, who talks to him, I said, hey, man, tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I'm sorry, and I'd like to make up. I don't like to fight. I don't need to fight. I don't need to fight, and I don't like to fight, and it's not I don't want to have a fight. I like Ryan, and I would like it if he liked me back, and I'd love to do stuff with him. Hopefully that will happen someday. Joey Nichols, like Pasquale, my favorite neighborhood in New York is Connecticut. Yeah, the recipe comes from New York, Connecticut. Good stuff. 49er minded. Jack Clark, the dude. He was good. 49er minded. Jack the Ripper. Dude, when I was a little kid, I grew up in San Francisco, and we played 2 sports. We played basketball outside on all the courts, and we played strikeout. And I would carry in my backpack a roll of tape so I could tape up any wall, and a big thing of chalk so I could chalk up any wall. And I always had a couple tennis balls at the bottom of my bag, because we would take the Muni. We'd be in the Richmond. You're at a buddy's house. Hey, let's go play strikeout. We just go find some school, tape up a strike zone. Game on, baby. And I love Jack Clark. And every time I would get in the batter's box, I would sit there and do the entire Jack Clark routine. I would kick out the back line, even though there was no back line. We're playing on cement. My buddies would be like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, I watch Jack Clark. He always kicks out the back chalk line. I'm kicking out the back chalk line. I'm reaching down for pretend dirt. I'm rubbing it on my leg. I'm getting in the batter's box, and I'm wiggling back and forth. Krug, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm Jack Clark, man. I'm Jack Clark. Love Jack Clark. There was a time when I was like 10 when I would play strikeout with my buddies, and I would write down like all the names of the players in the Giants lineup, and I would I would bat like them. So if it was, I couldn't go, I wasn't a switch hitter or anything, but I can remember sitting there. I'm Terry Whitfield. I'm Billy North. I'm Willie McCovey from the right side. It's just, I can remember it like it was yesterday. literally taking at bat after at bat after at bat against my buddies. I'm Mark Hill. I'm the Sheik. I'm Mike Sadek. I'm Daryl Evans. I mean, it was I just loved it. I don't know why I loved it so much. But yeah, we'd sit there. Sometimes after playing strikeout for hours, I'd turn around and try to hit left-handed. Couldn't do it. Never could do it. But yeah. Tommy says Baller is a good dude. Baller's better than a good dude. He's got a great channel and he's awesome. I love Baller. Baller's real. He's one of my favorite guys to have on. Baller, you and I got to hook up and do a little Niner live stream. Maybe we do that next week. Yeah, Baller's the man, and everybody should join his channel. I think it's Bay Area Baller 18. Let's see, Smitty, Larry, you're good, but you're not TNT NBA post game good. LOL. There you go. Oh God. Now we got people claiming all kinds of things. Okay. That's going to do it for us. But anyway, let's see. People are debating back and forth between our battle. Here we go. We got this one. Tommy Huxley. Tillman was a dog. Rest his soul. He's just a great football player, man. I scouted with the Cardinals, and it's funny. I'm watching film. He was there right around the same time. Never had any conversations with him. I scouted a safety named Kwame Lassiter that played with Pat. I worked in their pro personnel department under Keith Kidd and the great Joe Woolley, who I met in the Canadian Football League. And Pat Tillman, he was just special. He was just special. They were bigger guys. They were faster guys. But the guy brought it, and he was just a player. He was just an absolute player. And it's just, I love watching that football life. It just tells me that some people are, sacrifice. They sacrificed things. I mean, this guy sacrificed a whole career to stand up for what he believed in. And I've got so much respect for people who, we talk, right? I talk. I got a lot more respect for people who do than people who talk. That's really it. Let's see. Tommy Huxley says, Larry finds me interesting today. Funny because I'm a boring guy, according to my fiance. Tommy, you guys got to go sit down, work it out. There's counseling. There's always tomorrow. Adata 84 says Eric Swan at defensive tackle was a monster on those Cardinals teams. Eric Swan didn't even play college football. He played for like the Memphis Showboats or something like that, and in some semi-pro league. Eric Swan was a monster, kind of the Chris Jones of his era. All right. That's going to do it for us. Hey, thanks to everybody on the live stream. Really appreciate everybody. Oh, by the way, we are closing in on 19,000 subs. That's unbelievable to say that, but that is the truth. We are sitting at 18,479. So if you're in the chat right now and you haven't hit like or subscribe, please do. Helps the channel. The like just helps more people find the shows. And then subscribe, of course, will give you an alert every single time we go live. You'll get an alert saying that we're going live, so you don't have to miss any of our live streams or any of the stuff that we're doing. So help us get to 20,000. We'd like to get to 20,000 before training camp. We got a month to do it. Can I pick up 1,520 subs in 1 month? We picked up 1,000 something in the last month. So we'd have to increase our pace, but help us get to 20,000 by training camp. That's the goal. If I can get to 20,000 by training camp, that would really be fun. We've got all kinds of things planned for training camp. I can't even tell you yet because it's not official, but we're going to be bringing you top tier 49er content through starting in training camp right on through the season. Lots of face-to-face interviews with players, coaches, executives, Niner content creators, broadcasters, people around the NFL. It's going to be awesome. So definitely hit like, definitely hit subscribe. All your best Niner content is going to be right here on the Krug Show. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend. Maybe we'll get together later today with Dave Lombardi. If not, check me out tomorrow morning, I believe, on Grant's channel. Also tonight, we may go post-game on the Giants game. So hope everybody has a great Friday. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy some of this beautiful weather. Peace.
Man, I'm careful. You won't get exactly what you ask for. Evil, whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one. I don't need to hassle.